Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking you we will be expecting the minister. Nevertheless, let me thank the Stavros Foundation and the CEO, Madam Eli Andriopoulou, for hosting us here. We have also the president of the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Nikos Bakatselos. Good afternoon. Let us start also by thanking the USA and Danish Embassy for the support offered throughout this time. We have also the joy to have with us the Honorable Representative of the USA Embassy, Mr. Johannes Blatt. So let us start with a discussion about bikes. We'll have a discussion about bikes slightly different than the one we are accustomed to. We'll be talking about bicycles as a means of transport and development of sustainable economy. We'll be talking about the way bicycle operates in the city as a means of transport, back and forth commuting to the job, and as a tool of development and growth at the same time. I'm Makis Papandimitriou, and I represent the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce and the Committee of Social Responsibility. In this committee, we try to develop the interconnection between sustainable economy and modern entrepreneurship. So we'll be seeing how bicycle can operate in this way and how it can become a vehicle of growth, not merely a vehicle for transport, sports and well-being, but also as a vehicle of growth within our economy. We'll be talking and presenting quite a series of numbers, figures. Figures always tell the truth. So we'll say a couple of things. For instance, you see on the infographic I have behind me some elements drawn through the lockdown, during the latest lockdown due to the pandemic. We'll see, therefore, that during the pandemic, the Paris municipality created 50 kilometers of new vehicle lanes so as to host the citizens when they come back the circulation. We'll see that in the USA, the increase of the use of the bicycle was 175%, and even more importantly, we'll see top right that in April, the CO2 emissions were reduced by 17% because transports were less through the mass transport means and vehicles, and therefore there is a sign that when people turn to sustainable solutions for their transport, and such a solution is definitely the bicycle, we see a direct positive impact on the environment. What citizens currently ask at the global scale is a better lifestyle, a more healthy lifestyle. There are problems that we find no matter what the planet. For instance, air quality. In the urban environments, the atmosphere is quite polluted, and this is to the detriment of the citizens' health. Therefore, 7 million deaths are accounted for due to the bad air quality. At the same time, the pandemic that we still witness and experience, unfortunately, brought about a new approach. For instance, there's an increased fear of contagion, and there's an increased need for people to avoid congestion and find themselves in mass transport media. These characteristics make the bicycle a global mega trend, which is not merely related with sports, but actually has to do with economy. We see, therefore, a rapid increase in sales. We see a tremendous increase in the bicycle lanes all over the world. We saw it in our city as well. We also witness a great investment in new technologies and actually e-move, electric move, and we also see a great increase in what we call cycle commuting. In other words, the transport of people back and forth work, back and forth their house, with the use of bicycles. It is quite characteristic that in the UK we'll be expecting 14 million people to leave their cars at home and start commuting on bikes. We see a great change, which of course is being sustained by the government. We see programs such as Bike to Work introduced in the UK, where the use of the bike is sponsored, and we also have a subsidy through a mile payment for the people who use their bicycle for commuting. So with all that happening here, bicycle emerges as a new transport means and a new tool, and as we say, trying to enhance sustainable development. The point is to go ahead with the Sustainable Development Goals set by the UN. If you remember them, these are the goals introduced by the UN in 2015, have been signed and ratified by 200 countries, including ours, and one of the goals, Goal 11, speaks of sustainable cities, urban centers developed without any exclusions and developed within a framework of sustainable development. Therefore, the bicycle sustains this global goal through a quantifiable and measurable way. 3 indices which are used in order to describe what we do, because we say unless one counts, measures something, one cannot attain anything. So a first measurement from what we'll be hearing is within the urban environment. How many transfers take place in small distances, less than 5 kilometers? Another measurement is what percentage of people use the bike. There are cities where we have a 60% of inhabitants using that. And the big countries, if you like, the great first-ranking countries such as Denmark and Finland use the bicycle as a means, a basic means of transport. Therefore, we have the percentage of urban transports that take place with bikes. This, in the language of the people involved with the issues of transports, is called model split. What percentage of people is transferred through bikes? This we see it in countries that is very high. I tell you indicatively that France, where it has a mere 3% rate, in Greece is even lower, has set a goal for 2025 to reach a 9%. So we see a global trend. In order for this modal split, that is the people's commuting to the work, to be affected on a bike. So let us start this discussion today, and let us first greet the ambassador of Denmark to Greece, Mr. Hall. Your Excellency, could you please come forward?
Thank you for being with us. You speak from microphone.
So hi everyone. Sorry, I was late. I should have taken my bike instead of being caught up in the jam. Now, I'm supposed to do some branding for bicycles, which should be quite easy for a Dane, because the approval rate of biking and extending the use of bikes in my country is 84% of the population. So it's a winner's case. But now we are in Greece, and it takes a little bit more convincing to do, I think. So what are the points you mention when you want to brand bicycling? Now, I'm a political scientist, so I try to, make it systematically. So the first is the macro perspective. And there we have to look at bicycles as a means of reducing the CO2 emissions. We just heard about that a minute ago. So it's a very simple equation, because the more we recycle, the less CO2 emission we let into the atmosphere. And this will be part of some of the most important policy goals we have in Greece, in Denmark, and in the Union. Today, the chairperson of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, made her State of the Union speech in the European Parliament. And there she also talked very warmly for the climate. So it's going to be a still bigger and more important priority for the EU Commission. And it's very clear whenever I speak to the Greek counterparts about this, and it is also going to be discussed at very many European Council meetings and so on, Greece has the ambition of becoming one of the countries in the forefront of these efforts. I think that's very positive, because one could imagine that Greece would have other sort of more near priorities, but this is a fantastic effort made by your government. Now, the second argument would be the personal or the micro perspective. And this is what I just talked about. It's actually that the transportation by bicycle is very much more efficient than using the cars, especially, of course, during the rush hours. So what you experience is that you don't get stuck in traffic jams in Athens, or you don't have to ride a crowded underground train. No, you can take your bike, and the personal satisfaction you get is that you pass all these cars that are stuck in the jams. The third argument is what I call an efficiency argument, and it's a more economic and cold argument, because apart from all the other beautiful things there is about cycling, it's actually a good business, because it enhances the health of the population, and then it increases the efficiency of these people at the workplace. So various studies in the OECD and other places have shown that the healthier people are, the better or the higher the GDP is. And of course also the health element is part of what the OECD calls one of the factors for better lives. So this is what you experience when you get the better health. So the bicycle leads to better health, leads to higher growth, even higher GDP growth, so more money, and then because of that and because of the health, more happy people and better lives. Now the fourth and the last argument I would like to address is the tourism aspect of this. We have experienced, actually in Copenhagen, mainly in Denmark, mere bicycle tourism. People come to Copenhagen to bike. So they rent a bike, and there are hundreds of outlets for this. And they go back to their capitals and tell about this. And normally we get good feedback regarding this. And of course, this could also be a reality in Athens, but there's still a long way to go in terms of changing the infrastructure. But the dream must be that you can bike from Lycabettus or the Acropolis to right out to the beach on bicycle lanes, and people will have the opportunity to experience Athens by means of a bike. And it's a completely different experience than driving by car or even walking on foot. So what one could learn from Copenhagen is, of course, that the public space is equipped in a way that bicycles can easily go about. So actually, when I drive my car in Copenhagen, I can see this city is no longer at all for cars. It's practically impossible. Well, first of all, you can't park anywhere without getting, ripped economically. And there are too many cars, and the streets have been narrowed in order to make the space for the lanes. So it's not really possible to drive a car, and I think that's a good thing. And even the car owners in Denmark see this. So they have more or less given up taking the car in Copenhagen. So it's a bicycle. It's a bicycle city. And if you know the song, there are 10 million bicycles in Beijing, but there are not 10,000 bicycles in Denmark. There are actually 5.5 million bicycles, which is the same number as the population. Not in Copenhagen, but in the whole country. So a lot of people use it for commuting to work, and of course also during weekends in order to live in the city and experience the city. So it's an easy conclusion. So all the way around, actually, cycling just makes good sense. Micro, macro, personally, health, economically, tourism, and I could probably mention a lot of other arguments. So I'm looking forward to hearing the debate tonight, and thank you for the invitation for coming here.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for being with us. Να πούμε κάτι ότι...
Let us say something else. Precisely because we comply to all the guides and security measures in this wonderful venue, we must always have a small interval for this sanitization for the changes of the next speaker. It is a great joy to have with us Mr. Yannis Kefalogiannis, who is the Deputy Minister of Transport. We warmly thank you for being with us today. I would like to invite now to the podium Mr. Johanni Platt, the USA ambassador, Mr. Jeffrey Pyatt, who happens to be an excellent cyclist himself, could not attend, but we have with us Mr. Johanni Platt, who is the financial associate of the U.S. Embassy in Athens, for a very brief greeting. You have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. Deputy Minister, Ambassador, colleagues and friends, thank you for joining us at this socially distanced event, and thank you to the organizers for inviting me to speak tonight. It's my pleasure to be here with you on behalf of Ambassador Pyatt, who asked me to pass on his greetings to everyone. As many of you know, Ambassador Pyatt is very proud to be part of the dynamic cycling community here in Greece, and he's been able to participate in this event for the last 2 years, and he regrets being unable to attend tonight. But I'm happy to be here on his behalf and to welcome this year's theme of the cycle-friendly employer. So as governments, companies, and other organizations look for ways to become more responsible stewards of the environment, it makes sense to consider looking at how their employees get to and from work. There are many obvious benefits to getting employees out of their cars and onto bikes, and the ambassador outlined several of them, so I won't repeat them, but there are a lot to consider. In the United States, organizations across the country are looking at ways to facilitate greater use of bicycles for commuting, allowing more relaxed dress codes, offering flexible schedules, sponsoring bike share programs, providing facilities for employees to freshen up, and providing emergency ride services for employees who need to get home in a hurry or late at night. The U.S. government is a large employer itself, and it offers various incentives and support programs across its different agencies for employees who bicycle to work, such as subsidies for commuting expenses, access to bike share programs, reserved parking, and access to lockers and changing facilities. U.S. companies, similarly, both large and small, have embraced the cycling movement and provide incentives, facilities, and other resources for their cycling workforces. Cliff Bar and Company, Google, Salesforce, REI, General Mills, the list goes on. There is significant public demand for and interest in bicycling as a way to get around, including to and from work in the US. It's continuing to grow. In 2019, for example, the US company Motivate, which is a global leader in bike sharing programs, recorded over 3 million trips on their bikes in Chicago and Washington, D.C. each, and over 20 million rides in New York City, and have recorded hundreds of thousands more across the country from Massachusetts to Minnesota. Here in Greece, Prime Minister Mitsotakis and the government have stressed their commitment to a green agenda as part of sustainable economic growth. And as part of that, we welcomed the government's recent legislation, which offered financial incentives for individuals and corporations to purchase electric vehicles, including e-bikes. The government's new digital platform launched last month and has garnered a lot of interest already, demonstrating that there is public demand for the next generation of mobility solutions. I'm sure that tonight's event will offer us interesting, fruitful discussions and give us all new ideas about how we as employers, employees, and citizens can integrate cycling more into the suite of options for our travels to and from work. I look forward to seeing more bicycles and e-bikes here in Greece and elsewhere, and I wish you all a productive evening here during European Mobility Week. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. Και τώρα θα ήθελα να έχουμε...
I would like now to have an intervention, to hear an intervention from Mr. Kefalogiannis. Dear Deputy Minister, you will have a very interesting subject to elaborate upon, the so-called micro-mobility, that is, mobility with sustainable transport means in the cities. So we'll really look forward to listening to you.
My name is Claus Bunda. I'm the CEO of the Danish Cyclist Federation and former mayor.
Κυρίες και κύριοι, θα ήθελα καταρχάς να συγχαρώ το Κέντρο Πολιτισμού.
Let me first congratulate the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center and the Hellenic-American Chamber of Commerce for the initiatives taken in the framework of the European Mobility Week, and for those of us who serve in productive ministries such as ours, the Ministry of Transport. Such events are extremely important because they nurture and cultivate the culture of sustainable mobility and a new means of transport and mobility. The enhancement of sustainable urban mobility acquires ever greater importance, which, according to the WHO, by 2050, the urban centers will host 70% of the global population. For us, sustainable urban mobility is a central core of our strategy, not only for the obvious reasons, such as dealing with the impact of the climatic change, but also and foremost for the improvement of the citizens' life quality of the urban residents. And the bicycle has all the characteristics that can help in attaining that goal. The point is that although the advantages of using the bicycle are well known, such as that it has it's no environmental nuisance, or the improvement of the natural condition of the user, unfortunately, there are still impediments for its selection. And those impediments are more or less well known: the lack of safety, insufficient infrastructure, lack of design both from the central administration and local administration, and a lack of interoperability between the various mass transportation means. And all these adverse factors we aspire to limiting, and the first wage to pledge is securing an integrated planning of urban transport means, a plan that would place the emphasis and promote the alternative modes of transport, and will promote the quick and swift transport, and even pleasant one. Thus, in the Ministry of Transport, we prepare the first important tool for attaining this goal, which will be a modern legal framework concerning the plans of sustainable urban mobility. So as for the first time, public policies related to transports, road safety, and the use of bicycle to be integrated in a unique policy, so as to have nothing. Thus, in this way, we try as active members to play an active role through the integration of the bicycle in the daily lives. And because society must first give the good example, you may know perhaps that the Ministry of Transport has become the first accredited organization that is bike-friendly, and more specifically, we got the cycle-friendly employer 2 months ago, since we have special parking lot for bicycles that has all the prerequisites for secure parking. And I believe that we have gradually seen a change of mentality that characterizes both the government and the majority of citizens. Over the next days, we will be presenting for consultation the bill for the sustainable mobility, urban mobility and micro-mobility, that is the legal framework concerning a series of small vehicles that have entered our daily lives. And according to this framework, our country will be amongst the first to acquire specific rules of mobility and standards, especially with those plans of sustainable urban mobility. We introduce simple rules so as to encourage the local administration institutions to acquire access to the funding tools that support such kind of programs. Along with the colleagues from the Ministry of Energy and the Environment, we have cooperated in a way so as to promote the bill for e-mobility that includes e-bicycle, and we also work intensively so as for this bill to be quickly adopted and fully implemented. And we draft the registry of infrastructure and the market agencies so as to set the standards for those infrastructure. In concluding, I believe that the whole change of mentality and attitude is what incites us to do a big step towards a green mobility that will be environmentally and citizen-friendly. With that, I hope every success in the starting upcoming week of European mobility. Thank you. We warmly thank you, Minister. The truth is that this integrated planning of infrastructure is something that is necessary in order to develop bicycle in Greece. I wish you every success, and bravo for the accreditation of your ministry as an employer, cycle-friendly, giving also acting as a role model. So I had the joy to listen to the Danish ambassador describing what happens in Denmark. Now let us watch a video describing what happens specifically in Copenhagen. Klaus Bonham, who is the CEO of the Cycling Federation of Denmark and former vice mayor of Copenhagen, responsible for environmental issues. It's an impressive video.
Good evening, Athens. My name is Klaus Bonham. I'm the CEO of the Danish Cyclist Federation and former mayor for technical and environmental affairs in the city of Copenhagen. I'm very happy to be given this chance to give a talk at your very important event in Athens tonight on cycling-friendly businesses. I am sorry that I'm not able to be with you tonight, but I have visited your beautiful city some years ago. As you may be aware, Denmark is a small country up north in Europe. We are around 5.8 million people, and we do have a proud and strong cycling culture, not only in our capital, Copenhagen, but all over the country. Cycling accounts for almost 26% of all trips under 5 kilometers and 16% of all trips in total. As you can hear, we do have a strong cycling culture, and a cycling culture that actually starts already from when children are quite small. Copenhagen is, like the Dutch capital Amsterdam, one of the pride cycling capitals of the world. 49%, almost every second trip taken to education or work within the municipality is taken on bike every single day throughout the year. There's almost 600,000 people living in Copenhagen, and the average length of the bike ride is 3 kilometers. Why is cycling, everyday cycling and workplace so important? Well, it is important because we do know, at least in Denmark, I don't know how the number is in Greece, but in Denmark, 47%, almost every second fully employed person at the work market has 10 kilometers or less going to work. 10 kilometers is, to be honest, basically no distance on a bike, and definitely not on an electric bike. And we do have an interest in actually moving private cars away from the road infrastructure because they create quite big amounts of congestion, and congestion reduces the efficiency and productiveness of our society. It is an extremely good investment for our society to invest in making more people using their bicycle more on an everyday basis. We do have calculations from the Danish Ministry for Transport that says that for every kilometer traveled by bicycle instead of by car in the city, society gains approximately 0.7 euro, almost 70 cents, almost 3/4 of an euro in socio-economic benefits. That comes from prolonged life and, most importantly, a very improved public health. We have other calculations from, for example, the capital region of Denmark. This is the greater Copenhagen area. That's around 1.3 million people. But they have made calculations that says that cycling by our residents in the region saves businesses and workplaces in the region for 1.1 million fewer sick days per year. If any of you work with business administration or HR, you know that bringing down the numbers of days that your staff calls in because they're sick, if you can bring down that number, you make an extremely good investment for your company. You become more productive, you become more efficient as a company and as a workplace. And this goes within public offices, it definitely goes within production, and it also goes within office works and shops and retail and stuff like that. There is, of course, also another aspect in investing in making more people use the bicycle in your society. And that is, of course, the whole question of CO2 emission living up to the Paris Agreement. And again, the capital region of Denmark, the greater Copenhagen area, they have made calculations that says that already what is cycled today actually saves CO2 emissions equivalent to the annual emissions from 15,000 people. Just to say that improving the condition for everyday cyclists in your city and in your region can be an extremely good investment, both when it comes to public health, when it comes to growth and productivity, but definitely also when it comes to reducing CO2 emissions. These are some of the reasons why it is so important for businesses and business life to engage themselves in this discussion. And I can tell you that in Denmark, one of the close partners of the Danish Cyclist Federation is the Confederation of Danish Industry. Some people may ask, why on earth do the Confederation of Danish Industries, why do they have an interest in everyday cycling advocacy? Well, first of all, they do have an extremely strong interest in sound, healthy workers in their companies. Because, as I mentioned before, they're more productive, they're more efficient, they do create growth. But secondly, they also have an interest in moving people away from private cars onto the bicycles into public transport. Why? Well, because they basically want to free space on the roads, because then they can transport their goods, they can transport their services around the region and around the country in a much more efficient way. And we do know that congestion is rising heavily these years, and we also know that congestion basically creates a standstill in our society, and standstills are not productive, they're not efficient, they do not create that growth that we are extremely dependent on in the future. And this is why that the Confederation of Danish Industries, together with the Danish Cyclist Federation, are very engaged in the cycling-friendly employers scheme. It's a scheme that is initiated by the European Cyclist Federation, where the Danish Cyclist Federation is one of the founding members. Through that certification system, you can basically either get a bronze certification, you can get a silver certification, or the best one, you can get a gold certification. And what is it about? Well, it is basically about, it is a self-evaluation, and you can click onto the website, which is SFE, stands for Cycle-Friendly Employer Certification, sfe.certification.eu. But I'm pretty sure that my good Greek colleague, Spiros from Athens, that he can guide you in the right direction. But what is the self-evaluation about? Well, the self-evaluation is, for example, looking into your business. Is your bicycle parking good enough? Is there enough of it? Does it feel safe? Is it placed close to the entrance of your company? Secondly, how are the facilities for your staff? Do they have access to a shower if they want that? Do they have a locker room that they can use? Thirdly, maybe you can put up an air pump for their tires, some small repair kits where you can do small adjustments on your bike, maybe even have a cooperation with a local bicycle repairman that can come to the company once a month to repair the bikes of your staff. And fourthly, and probably most important, do you motivate, do you use motivation towards your staff to make them more cycling, to make them use their bicycle more? And do you communicate that to the rest of the society? And this is a very important aspect because one thing is civil society organization like the Danish Cyclist Federation, but when we, lobby on politicians, it's extremely important and very strong that actually business life also lobby for improving the facilities for cyclists. And of course, one thing is talking about wanting people to use their bicycle more on an everyday level. But to make people cycle more, you do of course need safe, secure, segregated, well-maintained, well-connected bicycle infrastructure. Good connection between residential areas where people live to business communities, business park, good connection between public transport and bicycles and bicycle infrastructure. And it does not come like this. It is an ongoing investment that you basically need to make over a long period of years. But when you are there, I'm pretty sure that you will also become a cycling city and a cycling nation. To round off, I will just mention a very good and fun campaign that we've done in Denmark for many, many years. Vi cykler til arbejde means we cycle to work. We've done this campaign for 24 years, so it's an old campaign. We make it every year in May. This year, due to COVID-19, we have postponed it to September. But the idea is that you basically create small teams at the company from 2 to 16 people. and you generate you count how many days that you bicycle, and you online register, and then we have a draw. We have loads of different prizes, and there are some very, very good prizes in that. This year it's a free Interrail card to each member on the team. But the idea is basically not the competition. The idea behind the We Bike to Work campaign is to create a dialogue on the workplace on how do we transport ourselves. It is the idea of the campaign is also to encourage cycling colleagues to basically encourage non-cycling colleagues to use their bike. So the campaign has a strong element of dialogue, of fun, of having all the good experiences that you get from using your bicycle every single day. I do hope that my little talk here has encouraged you to put a stronger emphasis on the connection between cycling and workplaces. I hope it has encouraged you as a business to become even more cycling friendly. And I do definitely also hope that it has encouraged the Greek society, the political level in Greece, to make good cycling plans, and also to make sure that in the development of these plans that there's an extremely good dialogue between civil society on one place and business life on the other place. A cycling society is a good and sound and efficient and productive society. So good luck with the rest of your conference tonight, and good luck with your ongoing work on creating a better everyday cycling environment. Good evening from Copenhagen.
Ωραία. Λοιπόν, νομίζω είμαστε...
Nice. So I believe we are ready to start with the first panel that is to be held. We will be commenting on what we've heard from Mr. Bonham, what happens currently in Copenhagen. So let me welcome to the panel Madam Vasiliki Kapari, who is HR Director of Sustainable Development in companies such as the Aldemar chain. And let me also welcome the soul and spirit of this event, Mr. Papageorgiou, who is Development Director of the organization City for Bicycle. And in my mind, if there's a person that is fully identified with the bicycle in Greece, is Mr. Papageorgiou. So where we started presenting figures and numbers. So I've heard Klaus conveying certain figures which were really impressive. Allow me to repeat, because this is how we learn, isn't it so? So in Copenhagen, 26% of all travels in the city is less than 5 kilometers. What we call the model split, that is, what is the ratio of people transporting on bike, is 16% in overall, but also gave us another fantastic figure. 49% of all transports, commuting transports, is on a bike, 49%. It is really impressive. Something equally impressive is that they have estimated that they save approximately 0.7 euros for each kilometer that is covered by bike, and this they have been doing for the last 24 years. Madam Kaparis, as a person of the HR, how does this sound? Whatever we've heard until now from the colleagues from Copenhagen, I would like a comment. Well, the first reaction is, wow. This is one thing I can say. What is a utopia for us? For them, this is their daily lives. And figures prove it. Of course, let us not forget it that Danes have a culture of bicycle more than 100 years. Immediately after the Second World War, the Danes and Dutch took their bikes and started circulating. This will not happen like that. It has to be nurtured. We have to change mentality, worldview, and this, of course, will change the way companies will deal with the bicycle. From the HR side, how important is it to have this mild exercise when we speak of a transport of 5 or 10 kilometers on bike? These are small distances. How important is it for HR? We've heard that they save more than 1 million days of absenteeism only thanks to the bike transport. Well, perhaps this is the most revealing figure. This is something measurable. Absenteeism, sick days, this is an index that all HR departments measure. So definitely we'll have an improvement of human health, of the immunity system, and this helps in reducing absenteeism and remaining effective and productive. But this is not solely that. It also has to do with the management of work stress. This is how we are built to do this flee or fight when we have a huge stress, and this is quite common in the work environment when we have a difficult environment or an angry employer. We feel this blood pressure, the cortisol secreted, and so forth, and the stress arising through the physical activity. This work stress management is improved, as well as other elements such as sleep. Through sleep, we have an improvement of our memory. We are more effective. We have greater self-confidence, which is necessary for a career person to have a high feeling of self-confidence. But also elements such as teamwork. When, of course, on the bike I may be alone when commuting, but we share the same hobby. So we speak about that. We speak of our daily experiences. We share events. We challenge on the kilometers we've covered. We co-participate in competitions. All that is bonding for our colleagues. Yes, we saw that in what Klaus Bonham used to say, that through the accreditation of cycle-friendly employer, we have the creation of teams that bond, especially exactly through this common characteristic. Let us come back to issues of HR, but meanwhile, let me shift to Spyros Papageorgiou. We've heard about this accreditation of cycle-friendly employer. Would you like to elaborate on the subject? Let us understand what this entails for Greek reality. Good evening. Let me first especially thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center for hosting this excellent event for a second year. Let me thank the Hellenic-American Chamber of Commerce, and more specifically Paki Papadimitriou and Angela Boyadis, and all of you who took your masks and came here to discuss about bicycles. The whole idea are bike-friendly companies. You had 7 figures from Denmark. Don't be afraid. It took them some time to attain all that. It took them 25 years. What I would like to describe you now are a couple of things. First, what is the profile of the employee who is interested in working in a bike-friendly company? How can a company become more bike-friendly? And at the end of the day, why should they do so? Let us first speak about the profile of the person who commutes on the bike. Perhaps the picture we had some years ago was a bit like that this is the person opting for a bike for commuting. Today, however, things are different. The person that opts for a bike has a very modern mode of transport, is interested in being fitted, does not want to waste time, wants to know precisely when one will leave and when will arrive, and wants, perhaps it can be the Prime Minister of Denmark, as you see here, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, as you see, Princess Mary of Denmark that takes her children to kindergarten on the bike, or Arnold, who goes to an appointment on his bike. Of course, this person may have problem. Things are different in Copenhagen, in Amsterdam, and quite different in Athens. The main problem, of course, is infrastructure. The second is the parking lots. These are objective problems. Unless there's a solution, it's pointless discussing them. The other two, which is the soil pattern and the flexibility in relation to other activities, can be solved. You see the lady that has gone for a coffee before or after her job has selected a folding bicycle that she can keep under her table. Now, for the inclination, with the advent of e-bikes, there's no problem. E-bikes have come to stay, are here to stay, and I give you certain figures which are interesting. In 2010, 500 bikes were sold in Europe. In 2019, there were 2.6 million sales. Over the next 5 years, there will be more than 10 million e-bikes sold per year, which is half of the overall number of e-bikes. And from this viewpoint, the plan of the Ministry of Environment and Energy is obviously to the right direction. The subsidies to e-bikes can greatly help because it will offer a solution, at least as far as the morphology, ground morphology is concerned. This is important because transport costs dearly in cost, in money, but also on the health, both mental and physical. Let us see what is the role of the employer in this whole equation. There is not only financial security and social acceptance offered by the employer. In every work space, social ties are created, a specific modus vivendi and attitude and habits of conduct are created. Someone dresses and speaks differently in an advertisement company, for instance, than in a lawyer's office or a maritime office. Therefore, the space and the nature of work dictates certain codes of conduct. Therefore, the creation of spaces for bike-friendly spaces is very important. That will help in advocating more bicycles in a city. How can companies attain that? Some time ago, 1 year ago, the European Cyclists Federation, which is the biggest body for the development of cycling in Europe, introduced this badge, this sign of employer, of cycle-friendly employer, to have a framework that will determine whether a company is friendly to a bicycle. It always valid in 17 countries. More than 200 accreditations have taken place. And in Greece, we have timidly launched this badge sometime before the lockdown. It could not be extended. But we already, the Ministry of Transports and the Kardits municipality were the first organizations that responded. Who can acquire that? Any employer, a small, very small, an SME, a big company, and a non-profit organization, a service or a public service. Why should they do that? Why should an organization or a company be accredited? Well, there's a relatively simple answer, because we cannot be indifferent to the climatic change. We must definitely change the paradigm of transport in modern cities. Companies have a very strong social footprint, and this must be explored. And why not? This is a very simple process based on simple criteria, on information that will be offered, on the coordination and the organization needed for the promotion of that campaign, the services offered to the employee, the infrastructure it has, on how it handles the parking lots, and finally, what are the services offered to the visitors who want to reach that company on bike. How is this accreditation implemented? In 3 steps. First of all, we have a self-evaluation by the company, which is the most interesting stage, because the company perceives and realizes what are the steps that should be followed in order to create a bike-friendly environment. Then we have a registration and recording of the existing situation. The activities that must be introduced in order to improve the current reality are presented, and then accreditation follows. At this point, I must say that the idea of the European Cyclists Federation and of this sign is not to cause problems or reject companies that do not comply to the prerequisites, but actually to promote and demonstrate that in each company there are numbers of prerequisites and employees that would be willing to make some of their transports by bike. There are 2 preconditions. There should be a coordinator on issues of mobility in each company, and the second, of course, is to have a secure parking space for the bikes, for the bicycles. The desired effects are that with such a system, companies create a bike-friendly environment. It encourages the employees to use the bikes not necessarily on a daily basis, if that is not feasible, but even as a pleasure means, or for a cup of coffee on the weekends. It informs its employees on the benefits, and it can also communicate this policy and thus create a mild and positive leverage and lobbying tool to the government and the citizens themselves, with a view to changing their mentality, their attitude. What we say, for instance, that Denmark and the Netherlands have a culture for the bicycles. They were not born with that. It is not innate. They acquired it after many years of efforts, consistent, and because they understood that this is to their benefit. But this is not the whole thing. They can also, through the development of bike use, they can create and introduce new business models. Companies and society change. Let me give you the example of a company in the Netherlands, Swapfit, that used to have 2 employees 5 years ago, and now it has 450 employees. It has 30,000 bikes, borrowing bikes from students to employees, and is also expanding to neighboring countries. Psychologistics is a very sexy subject, if you allow the expression. It's a catchword, a buzzword, because it has been proven that more than 25% of the urban transports can be substituted by e-bicycles. 50% of professional services can be rendered by cargo bikes, and more than 77% of the individual transports for shopping, transfer of children, and so forth. When we speak of services, we speak, for instance, for a waste recycling operating in the historic center, e-bikes that transport bulky boxes, a parent carrying around the children, or daily shopping. So what's the Greek reality? We like to complain and consider that we are year lights away from other European countries, but the truth is that a lot of things have been done to the right direction. Let me speak about the e-bike subsidy program from the Ministry of Energy, an excellent activity that already bears fruit and encourages all the more citizens to discover e-bike. the measures on micromobility of the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, various announcements of new bike lanes have been made by the Ministry of Energy, which have been clearly defined in time and with specific budget and deadlines set. Recently, the Ministry also announced the national strategy on the bike, which would be sci-fi some months ago. The big tour, the big walk in Athens, despite the many problems, yet brought into the streets many cyclists, and the program of micromobility in the various municipalities placed the emphasis on the bicycle. All these create such a framework which the companies can exploit, having created a bike-friendly image. So why should companies become bike-friendly at the end of the day? First and foremost, because they create glad and healthy employees. Everybody wants that. Without even realizing it, companies can contribute to solving the most complex problems of the city. They can create new modern business models and new jobs. They can contribute to the change of mentality. They can contribute to training, what we call lack of education of the citizens, of civic education. And finally, they have no reason not to do so, because with a minimal investment, companies will have a definite positive impact and a yield which will be huge for Greek society. Thank you.
Αγαπητέ Σπύρο, μια και έκανες αναφορά, πριν περάσουμε στα θέματα του HR, γιατί θα βουτήξουμε μέσα στα θέματα του HR, έχουμε την χαρά να έχουμε την κυρία Αλεξάνδρα Σδούκου μαζί μας. Είναι η Γενική Γραμματέας Ενέργειας. Έγινε μια αναφορά από τον Σπύρο στην
Spiros mentioned something about subsidies on e-bicycles. Madam Sdoukou, we would like an intervention to see how e-bicycle can be also a vehicle for companies. So we'd be glad to listen to you, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Energy. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Alexandra Sdoukou. I'm the Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Energy. I'm very glad because you were the best ambassador of our ministry. I don't like speaking about what we do in the ministry. The best awards is when you listen from other people outside that we have timidly certain things that are introduced, that they are not remain an empty letter, that things start changing the site of our cities. The truth is that we have e-bikes in the ministry. We wanted to act as a role model, of course, starting and launching this policy in our ministry so as to have our employees commuting on an e-bike. I thought of coming from Mesogeion, from the ministry here on an e-bike. I was afraid, to be honest. I hope that next year things will have changed and will be safer. I really thank you for the invitation. I feel as if being in another European country, in another European city where conditions are mature and different, but that I start realizing that in our country as well, we start seeing this culture appearing of a bike, which as a main means of transport. I would like to think that we have also made our minimal contribution from the ministry. You referred to the program of e-mobility, when a group of people in the ministry started in December, some late evening, in front of a white sheet of paper, and we thought what we should do right away, what could we implement within the first semester, because in the ministry we usually discuss on years on end, time goes by and they all remain, everything remains in paper. So it was there that the idea appeared to develop e-mobility in our country. what we all see abroad and we are envious of. We arrive at the foreign airport, an e-taxi awaits us. We reach the city center and there's noiseless mobility. We see the e-bikes. What we're so envious of in foreign countries, how can we introduce it and change the mentality of Greek citizens as well? And this is how we started the preparation of this framework for the development of e-mobility, which is holistic. It is not merely a program aiming at substituting conventional cars with electric ones, but we wanted to introduce e-bicycles, taxis, and mass media transport, mass means of transport. This policy was launched with the adoption of the law on the development of e-mobility some months ago. This is a tool, an instrument which will help in many ways to have this policy fully evolving, and especially to create new productive investments in our country. We do not merely want to substitute cars, buy new cars, but we want to produce added value locally in our country. This is why we aimed at introducing incentives so as to attract investments in our country on e-mobility, be it the production of chargers, batteries, and so forth. The program I Move on electricity is the main factor, but the star, if you like, and now we have the two bicycle lanes that are, one starts from Kifisi until Gazi and the other from Katehaki and through the university campus until Evangelismos. It is the national strategy on the dissemination of the bicycle use, and this broad planning we have on transports through with a green profile, a crystal clear goal to reduce pollutants in our country and the environmental footprint. We have a very close cooperation with the Central Association of Municipalities and Communities so as to support the smart, sustainable practices, mobility practices, and through this cooperation we jointly plan actions and initiatives that we will be supporting this urban mobility plan of ours. The evolution of the activity of the ministry has an impressive acceptance in the e-bike. It was not a surprise, we expected it. We had foreseen it in the contacts we've had with the sector. Let me give you some indicative figures so as to understand. In the first month of the implementation of this program, until yesterday, 5,600 demands were submitted for the subsidy, with an overall public expenditure of 5 million euros. From the 45 we have earmarked until the end of the year. That is 10% of our resources is already earmarked within the first 3 weeks. E-bike, of course, is the one most desired. 4,370 citizens have applied for an e-bike subsidy. The e-scooter equally 900 demands submitted, and this implies a change of the fleet for logistics, delivery boys and so forth. And the e-vehicle also within the 3 weeks had a great resonance. 385 demands were filed. This number for the substitution of conventional cars with electric ones may seem very small, that corresponds to 75% of the overall immatriculations of e-vehicles over the last 4 years. That is, practically whatever has been sold within the last 4 years has been purchased, if you like, or ordered through the program. In the ministry, we have set a quite ambitious goal for e-mobility. We want by 2030, 1 out of 3 vehicles, new immatriculations to be electric, but we are also interested in the shift to the use of e-bicycles in this transport mix. So all these figures are impressive. And this can also be seen from the figures in the use of bicycle. We know that the time of delay reaches 4 months. Each month we've got a new shop. The companies constructing bikes make massive recruitments. So our utility and responsibility is to facilitate in the ministry with any tools you have available and support these radical changes towards the right direction, towards our policy. We started on a pilot project selecting to support citizens and professionals, but I heard you saying how important it is to have the e-bike in companies. We pay heed to this acceptance and these comments. At the next stage, we would like to integrate a form of subsidy to facilitate companies to introduce e-bike. Nothing more. I'm extremely glad for the fact that e-bike is continuously enhanced, is boosted, and we're always open to dialogue and fresh ideas. Thank you. We warmly thank you. So let us see a series of subjects of interest. In order to integrate such a program to the benefits offered to the employees, what would be the problem? Well, if I have the appropriate legal framework, if the political will is declared, if I have the accreditation, I've given a roadmap, and perhaps a CEO also who really believes in the active lifestyle, because if the administration doesn't believe in that, nothing can be applied. The only thing that might perhaps be of concern for me and any HR manager would be the case of accident, nothing more. An accident for which I have the moral responsibility, because I encouraged the person to use the bike and therefore he was more vulnerable perhaps, but also the so-called work accident that takes place by definition 1 year before, or 1 hour before, or 1 hour after the time period, and I know how we could do away with that. So we do have this risk. Let us approach this risk from 2 sides. First of all, from the insurance viewpoint. So we'll see what is the coverage that a company needs in order to proceed, and then we'll see in action, legally speaking, what is the exposure, the liability of a company. So let me now welcome Madam Χρήση from Inter-American. Madam Eleftheriou will speak about the insurance approach, insurance perspective of the subject. Yes, I do so with great joy. Good evening. Before that, let me also mention that as a company, we have recently placed the order for 10 new bikes for the commuting of the employees between the 2 buildings of our company on Sigru Avenue, the beginning and the end of the Sigru Avenue. I thank the SNFCC and the AmCham. It is important that we're back in physical presence. It's very important. While observing social distancing, and this is an initiative only positive that can improve our lives. So bicycle, from the absolute toy of our childhood, it has evolved into a trend for very few, daring ones, perhaps risky for me, and now we discuss how this can be integrated as a means of integrating employees and commuting to their workplace. The bike grew up, so did we. We have a greater need for alternative transport modes. We speak of sustainable mobility. All these are things that are discussed in the European Commission. We also have important initiatives in our country. Some of them were mentioned towards this direction. I will refer, due to the close cooperation we have, to the municipality of Trikala, where we had the great happiness to ensure the first no-driver buses that first were used in Trikala, and simple vehicles. Also bicycle lanes, first was Trikala, then Volos, Alexandroupolis, and recently in Athens. Of course, we are definitely lag behind from the figures that were shown by the previous speakers. We are not Denmark, we are not a Central European country. There are a lot of issues that have to be solved. Reference was made. We don't have a broad network of lanes, so no service door-to-door. The ground morphology, high temperature for many months, but I will also add bad infrastructure, but additionally the lack of social education and culture, so as to show respect to the pedestrians and cyclists. Problems which unfortunately are impeding factors for me, for instance, to adopt this way of transport or better integrate in my life. In absorbing all those turmoil, the insurance company, the insurance market may perhaps offer a solution so as for the cyclists to feel more secure. Issues as dealt with by the cyclists. What happens with the theft? What happens when I have an accident? A road accident? A work accident? What happens if an employee, as you mentioned, has an accident during his transport while commuting to the workplace? Insurance companies can play also an additional role, a training role, because it is in their DNA, their business DNA, notions such as road safety and accidents prevention. When these companies are sizable, as is Inter-American, which has 1,200 jobs on the whole sovereignty, and with 1 million customers, you realize that these companies can be the great ambassador for the promotion of such role models and attitudes. This is what I wanted to say in a nutshell. I'm extremely glad that we are in this round table, because that of this discussion, perhaps future discussions, will all be able to create the appropriate conditions and framework for safe commuting on bike for employees and employers to move freely and safely. Thank you. We thank you very much. You referred to the case of accident. We referred to what is of concern for the HR department. So it's high time we addressed a person that knows work legislation, as very, very few. We have the great joy to have with us Mr. Dimitris Kremalis, who is partner of the law office Kremalis, a person to whom we will address the following question. Mr. Kremalis, welcome. Well, if a company promotes the use of bike as a sustainable transport mode, if it communicates towards its employees the respect to the code of transport and so forth, when a company does so, is it liable? Is it exposed legally? Well, let me start expressing the great optimism that you have passed upon us and passed the torch from the USA Embassy and the Center. It's something that we are in need. I'm not here to ruin this optimism, but actually to enhance this optimism. Listen, the notion of the work accident is well known. Law 551 of 215 is a law that envisages a liability for the employer, but in the framework of insurance legislation, this is reduced liability. That is, it is partly covered in the case of moral damage or of moral strain. From this viewpoint, the work accident can cause an aversion, a negative feeling, but this negative feeling can be annihilated when, on one hand, we have the appropriate infrastructure and policies bike-friendly, when we have companies with accreditation. And when we say bike-friendly, we mean companies that embed this culture in their policies. They offer incentives to the employees, have eventually some policies that they integrate protection rules which do not give some different guidelines, some safeguards. Therefore, such an employer who is definitely compliant, complies not only to the legal framework, but also puts the emphasis on the employee, has only benefits from this process. Neither fraud nor heavy negligence can be considered. And allow me a personal remark. I consider that the risk from such a risk with someone that commutes on a car in relation to someone that commutes on a bike in a well-defined cycle lane where one moves at a lower speed and with personal individual protective means is far lower. That is, the bicycle, if we offset it, the risk of the employer, which is not only the employer's risk, but also the employee risk, when someone moves on a car with all the risks, additionally the stress of finding parking lot, to be on time for a meeting and extraordinary conditions, this compared to a commuting on bike is far less. This by itself addresses your question and gives a positive notion for the remaining of the week. Thank you. We warmly thank you. We've had the labor relations lawyer, you said, a magic notion, commuting policy. This is a wonderful policy. We are a bit lagging behind, it is true. We conclude with this panel. Have a small break for the next panel.
Λοιπόν, το επόμενο πάνελ.
The next panel will be the topping of what we have discussed, because we will listen to the users. We will be listening from those who use the bike on a daily basis, or as much as possible, in order to commute. and there will be 4 ladies making a presentation. We have excellent balance of men and women. Happily, we will have more women. So let me welcome Madam Nerina Komnioti, who is the Director General of the companies, advertised companies in association, and who is a fanatic cyclist, and 3 ladies from the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Cultural Center, Madam Maria Peri, Madam Danai Panagiotopoulou, and Madam Xenia Taktikou. Welcome, ladies. I would like you to count us your personal stories. We would like to listen to your personal stories as bike users on a daily basis. And I would like to start from Madam Komnioti, saying, you had an organization and you commute on your bike. What is your experience? The fact that I direct the association has nothing to do with my commuting on bike. It's what Mr. Papageorgiou used to say, that we imagine people on a bike like the one you showed, with the boxes and cartons. But you go to your work every day, you have a whole Greek market who are members of the association. Well, I would say my personal truth is somewhere between the 2 photos that Mr. Papageorgiou has shown, that is between the picturesque thing, because when I started moving on a bike, I was the picturesque kind, and the ultra chic girls, which is not the case, and I will explain why. So I have put the bike in my transport, not as a part of leisure, from 2004. And from 2013, I commute exclusively on the bike when I'm alone, to my office, to many of my appointments with our members and associates, to my personal jobs, shopping, obligations, and so forth, and certain evenings, either solely with the bike or the bike in combination with metro. I would really like to say, in a nutshell, I would like to say that this is perfect. That's astounding, no problems, but I do not lie. I never lie, so I will tell you, it takes a lot of persistence and hard-mindedness. It is very difficult. On the other hand, I wouldn't change it for anything. I have opted to move on a bike or walking or mass transportation means, first of all, in order to exercise, because for many years I didn't have the time for physical activity. So this is a way to stay fit. The second reason is because that I have decided that my individual environmental footprint to be as small as possible. The third is that I hate congestion. The fourth, because I want always to be precise on my appointments. And most importantly, when one is on a bike and sees the sky, one can understand the difference. When I ride, I leave my free thinking. I feel the air, I watch the sky, and I feel wonderfully. These are the wonderful things. It's a lifestyle. I can't do otherwise. I may be perhaps ridiculous because I ask people to go somewhere close after the office so that I can follow and so forth. On the other hand, however, my bike, which is not electric, can tire me on multiple occasions. I may be very hot or very cold because I use it around the year, both around the clock. I cannot wear whatever I would like to. I only wear things that I can use. I take a second apparel for my appointments. I can't wear all kinds of shoes. I'm very anxious whether I will find my bike when I go back. And all these, although there could be impediments, there could be hurdles that might discourage me, there's misdemeanors vis-a-vis the main benefits, which are two. The main problems that there are no bike lanes, at least in my trajectory, and the bike lanes are very badly built with huge problems of irrigation systems or whatever, or parked cars, because all these lanes are interrupted and not protected. So the cyclist is continuously on a row with vehicle drivers and so forth. So I believe that the problem of infrastructure, if there is the capacity to move on a lane, this is the first problem. And the second is obviously the lack of education and respect. This doesn't exist. I ride by the ear. By the ear, I know who drives behind me, whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's a jeep or a taxi. I understand it. From the way the driver, from the sound of the car, I understand the behavior and the attitude of the driver, the gender and the social education. I am happy with my bike, but it needs a lot of persistence, of courage, and a lot of fortune, a luck. One has to be lucky to survive. Now, your experience. Good afternoon. No, it's not a big distance. I live close by, but sufficient. I work here as my colleagues, but I have done that from the beginning that it was still a work site. And it gives me great joy. I realize that some days that I don't use the bike, I'm more unnerved where I arrive at work. That's all. How about you? Good evening. I have the I'm fortunate. I live at the Paleofaliro. I'm close. So there are no streets. I follow a wonderful course by the sea. And this gives me a wonderful start for the day. And when back from work, the way back really relaxes me. So you make Madam Community jealous because she has to go through a battle to reach her office. Well, how about you? Good evening. I live at Halandri. It is really far away. I'm a very recent cyclist. When I started working here, was one of the main problems. And the e-bike, for me, was the only solution. As the previous said, that I can control the time and so forth. So I decided, in order to avoid buses after the lockdown, it was an extra incentive, although I had decided beforehand. And after having fully mapped my itinerary for safety reasons, no avenues, I use sidewalks, I had definitely very carefully planned mapped my trajectory before coming here. The problem I hadn't foreseen are lots of gaps on the sidewalks. So quite quickly, because we have exceeded time, what would you like to see changed? Madam Komnioti mentioned the issues of infrastructure, the issues of culture. Of course, it takes a lot of time to have them changed. Is there something that is really pestering you and that should change immediately so as to feel better on the bike? I believe that it will greatly help us to enhance the cyclist culture, what the previous speakers have said, to boost all that and have it in our DNA. We're a country where it doesn't rain on a daily basis, so we can use it more than the Danish or the Dutch. So if one manages to introduce a legal framework I believe we have more problems. There will be problems such as gaps and pits, the risky ways. All these will be solved, I believe. Can I add something? Let me just say that a lot of things could change, and obviously must gradually change. We've already had impressive elements on what happens, what is currently created. I would like to address a plea to everyone. We are currently on the ride. It's a wonderful momentum. One of the good things of the pandemic crisis is that people realized that they can walk more and cycle more. And since the pandemic unfortunately goes on, and we must definitely avoid the mass transportation means, this is a tremendous momentum. We should do our best so as not to have the people going back to the individual use of vehicles, which definitely burdens the environment, but then into something more sustainable and environmentally friendly. And if not now, then never. It must be done now. It is high time. Yes, every crisis is an opportunity, and this is an opportunity for something better. I warmly thank you, dear ladies, for your experience that you conveyed. So we reached the end. A closure by the people who have the responsibility for the European Mobility Week. We would like to know how Madam Kalliopi Papadaki, the national coordinator for the European Mobility Week, viewed this event. And this is how we conclude. We are only 15 minutes late, and we will be concluding in a couple of minutes. So, Madam Papadaki, we would like your view. Good evening. I warmly thank you for the invitation and this excellent event. The truth is that the foundation always organizes something special, and it has been awarded on many occasions on the matter. Everyone has mentioned the issue of culture, which can never change, doesn't change overnight. From all the years I've been involved in the European Mobility Week, I can tell you that the mentality changes when one tries to make people love this different way of mobility. The campaign has been embraced by the cities, and they participated with great enthusiasm. Today, which is a special day, the first day at a very special year with a lot of dire circumstances and unprecedented events, we are at the same level as last year, when at a pan-European level we have 1,000 less participations in this campaign. In cities which are smaller, we've seen that as every year, with this great feast of the European Mobility Week, the way people perceive their city, the way they communicate, they transport and change attitude is impressive. I remember 10 or 15 years ago at Rethymnon in Crete, they took away the city lights because there were rows between the Cretans who has the priority. Today, drivers always stop for the pedestrian to cross the road, which is sci-fi for Greece, used to be sci-fi. So culture radically changes. The same way as aesthetics is nurtured. I don't believe that it is unfeasible. We have a lot of positive examples, and therefore, each week, the companies are 10 top ranking cities, already conquered some prizes. I believe that this year we can always achieve that. We're extremely enthusiastic with wonderful new ideas, and I believe that everything can be done. It is an issue of personal and collective responsibility. It can be done. Thank you. So we reached the end of this event. I would like to greet you goodbye with a phrase of Klaus Bonham at the end of his speech sent from Copenhagen. He said that the community of cyclists is a very good and sound community, and it will be interesting for the companies to embrace this community. Those of us who are cyclists by the sea or towards Sunion on the weekends, we know that if someone stops for any reason, there's no case for a passing by cyclist not to stop to ask if anything is okay, if one wants an assistance. There's a solidarity and a society and community of people which cannot be found amongst the motor drivers. I warmly thank you, and go on your bikes.